The Wests Tigers Podcast, proudly supported by the Wests Tigers Podcast Forum. Have your say on everything Wests Tigers by joining up for free today. Follow the link at westtigerspodcast.com.au.
Looking to spark Skelton. Here we go. This is what we want to see more of from Australia. Gerald Skelton. Remember the name. Gerald Skelton goes in for Australia.
Back for Bird. Bird will try a kick. Bird will chase. It's easy. Something special happens every game around this kick.
Good ball and running straight onto it is Royce Hunt. Big Royce Hunt. Gets over the line. 2 tackles left in this set. Royce Hunt, why wouldn't you give him the ball? Gets to within half a metre of the line. 25 out from the line. Away to Jerome Luai. He's going to take them on here. Taking on the big man. The little halfback's through again. Luai's going to score.
It's the West Tigers Podcast. It's episode number 364. Eddie Otto joined by Steve Stratton, Nick Hayes and Declan McCutcheon. Boys, welcome back. It's good to see you all again. I think Joel said, Steve, it was a bit of a B team last week. I thought that was a bit harsh to Gary.
That was fairly accurate.
Sorry, Rachel, Kelly and Jordan. Actually, listen, you guys did a great job. But, a Gary-less podcast, Nick, so I hope you've bought a couple of lozenges, mate. You might have to talk a bit more than usual.
I'll do my best, mate. There's only one Gary, though, so, I'll do what I can to replace the great man.
All right, and Declan, hello to you. I won't ask you how you are. I mean, Gary did all those niceties asking people how you are, but it's good to see you're still part of the Tigers podcast. You were a bit lazy this year. I thought you only did about 6 or 7 pods, so it's good to see you here in November is it October or November, doing the hard yards?
Yeah. It's starting with a tough preseason, but work's busy, don't have a lot of free time. But I thought I'd just make time for you, Eddie, because I do miss you.
Thank you.
Your rants. So yeah.
Likewise. All right. Well, my favourite segment will be back later tonight, buy, sell, and hold. But I've got a couple of new ones tonight to fill some time, given there's not a whole lot of news, given we're not playing footy every week. I've asked the boys for one thing they're enjoying about the off season. Can be Tigers related or non-football related. One rant. That's my cue to go on a rant. One's going to be about the Tigers and one's non-Tigers related. And one roster move the boys would make if they had free reign over the off-season, whether that be a new signing or cutting a player or trading a player, etc., etc. So that should be plenty of content, boys. But Steve, I'll start with you. What's one thing you're enjoying about this off-season?
Well, I was just about to tell you this while we were chatting before we started recording. I've sat down for the last couple of days and been watching the Sheffield Shield, right? So I love my cricket, pretty much as I love the footy. And so I've been watching New South Wales Victoria, and I sat down this morning really looking forward to watching young Sam Constance have a bat. He's off a double tongue, looking like a bit of a smoky for the test team. And your kid gets out second ball. So
that's cricket.
I don't know. Me in sport, we just can't seem to find a match.
Very
that's what I'm watching a bit of Shield, and I'm looking forward to the cricket season.
It's good to see it back on the TV, Steve. It's been disappeared into streaming services, and you have to get your laptop out to watch it. But it's been on Fox and New South Wales and Victoria. They're playing some of the Aussie boys, Steve Smith, Mitchell Stark. So it reminds me of 20 years ago when they used to have actual crowds go to Shield games. Yeah,
and there is a crowd down there at Melbourne. Like there's a section of the grandstand they've opened. There's a fair few people there. So one of the things I'm looking forward to when I move back to Sydney in a few weeks is actually going to some of the Shield games. Because, it's good cricket.
It's been a dud couple of years of cricket if you're an ardent cricket fan with the Australian summers, but it won't be this year. They're playing India in a 5-test series. So sorry, Nick and Declan, for boring you. It's not a cricket podcast, but what are you looking forward to, Nick, or what are you enjoying about this off-season?
I'm probably not as much a cricket avid fan as you boys are, but I do love the Big Bash, so I'm looking forward to that starting. When does that start, Eddie?
Usually around just before Christmas time, school holidays, early December.
Okay, yeah, that'll let me through close to NRL preseason, so I'm looking forward to that. But no, just enjoying daylight savings at the moment, to be honest. A bit more daylight, temperature's starting to climb a little bit. Very nice for golf conditions. Do love my golf, so yeah, just a bit more outdoors time, mate.
Declan, you're more you're more of the Scottish background. You wouldn't be liking daylight savings, would you?
Well, I actually tan quite well for a Scotsman, so thanks for asking. But yeah, I was going to say daylight savings as well, but I'm going to change it to Celtic. Unlike the West Tigers, the Celtic actually win games. We're undefeated so far this season. We did take a licking in the Champions League off Dortmund, but we won't talk about that. But besides that, I think we're going pretty smoothly, so can't complain about that, which is nice.
Well, I mean, Declan, the Scottish League, it's probably the only league that's probably worse than the Australian Soccer League, so...
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far. But yes, there is only a 2-horse race, isn't it? But, when you're the first horse, it doesn't really matter. You don't really care, do you?
No. Steve sort of stole my one. It's probably, I'm a cricket man. I do a lot of cricket coaching in over the summer and enjoy watching a lot of grade cricket and shield cricket, etc., etc. So let's go on to the negative side, Steve, which I like to be on. One rant, Tigers related, over the last couple of months. Surely you've got something for me.
Well, Tigers related, yeah, indirectly Tigers related, and it's because you're watching these Pacific Championships, and also I think there's an end of season tour that Samoa are playing in or something, and it's just these meaningless end of year football games where, like, when you looked at the games on show last weekend, if those players had done about 3 hours prep for those games, then I'd be surprised.
I didn't know they were playing on Friday night, Steve.
No, well, that's right. And the only reason I did was because I just caught something last minute and turned it on. I saw that the girls' game was on, and then noticed that the guys' game was sort of following. But, I don't know. I think a lot. I can't speak for others. I can only speak for myself. All I do is I watch these games, find the Tigers players, and hope like hell they don't get injured, right? Because the Tigers are the ones paying these guys, and clubs are paying them big money. And I just think it's the end of the year. They play 27 rounds plus finals, whatever it is. It's too long, mate, and it's just too much footy. So it's meaningless. It's just meaningless footy.
It's a tricky one, Nick, because I'm like Steve. I've got no interest at all in these championships, but I know it's meaningful for the teams like Tonga and Samoa and et cetera, but just playing at this time of year after 27 rounds of NRL, you wonder, these players are highly, highly played by their clubs. And if you suffer an injury in October or November after a long season, I just think the balance is out of whack. I'm not saying get rid of Test football, but I just don't agree after, a 30-week season, if you play finals, that you go and play another month or 6 weeks around the globe of Pacific Tests.
It's huge, isn't it? Surely it's just the NRL doing their best to, revenue raise and keep the entertainment or the product going as long as possible, as the year extends out towards Christmas. But it's a huge year, and by the time this is wrapped up, I don't know when the final is, a couple of weeks time, a few weeks time or something. But by the time as a Tigers fan, we look forward to Taruva and Luai walking into Concord. They're going to be pretty knackered. They're going to be walking in probably just before Christmas, and I can't imagine they're going to want to be doing much training at that time of the year, and they won't be as the year's winding down. But it's a very, very long season.
Declan, you're more the glass half full person the last couple of years, at least since Madge got sacked. So give me something positive about these Pacific Championships. You've probably been watching, I reckon.
I mean, I think it's a good opportunity to see players in different environments. We got to see Taruva at fullback. That was pretty good, pretty interesting. I don't know. I think that he didn't really get the ball in any good position because the halves didn't really get it to him, and he's not really a natural ball player either. So, but I think there was some good signs. But yeah, I'm not sure he'll be pushing Bulla for that spot anytime soon. But I could be wrong. But yeah, I just think it's an obvious area of growth for the game. But the only problem is Australia's just so dominant. They could have an A and a B team, and the A and the B team would probably play each other in the grand final. So how do you how do you make that competitive? I think that's the biggest problem because
It has got stronger though, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like Tonga, Samoa, they've become leaps and bounds, and like actual legitimate players have like actually pledged allegiance to them. But then there's still those kind of like mid-tier guys in these teams or like guys from New South Wales Cup, Queensland Cup that so that like the level of someone in like the Fijian team where someone like Api could be playing, but then you've got guys who are reserve graders as well. It's just too big a difference right now. I would like if they just maybe condensed it a little bit more, had like a Six Nations like in rugby where they just had like the big players like New Zealand, Australia, England, Tonga, Samoa, and then like it's more like the product of the game's better. More people would watch it. It's more interesting, and it's like bang, bang, bang. But now it's just weird because Samoa's playing England and like a test up there. Like no one's really going to watch that, and then you have this weird tier system here where like the lesser teams are playing, and then Australia and New Zealand are playing. So it's just kind of here, there, and everywhere at the moment. I really think if they tightened the format, it would do a lot to kind of make it more entertaining.
Yeah, like I agree that there's a place for international footy, absolutely, and the development of the game, across the globe is a good thing. But I got to ask the question: if we just look at the women's game for a minute, what good did Australia beating Papua New Guinea 84-0 do for the women's game, like on Friday night? Like, how was that helpful to the growth of the women's game? How was that a decent hit out to strengthen Australia? And how is it a good game for Papua New Guinean girls to develop their skill set? Like, it was just useless.
It's a tricky one for probably Volandis, Declan, because looking to bring in a PNG side in a few years, so I suppose you've got to give them some exposure even in the women's game, but I'm sure it's not a great look, at least on television, when teams are up 60-0 at half-time or whatever.
No, but I suppose the counter argument to that is, and this isn't what I'm making, but this is like what you think, that you have to start somewhere. And like I think rugby league is just it's so tribal, it's so massive in areas where like people already follow it. But like the problem for the NRL is how do you then take that and expand it in other places? And that you just have to like try and branch out to these sorts of places to like give the women like more opportunities to play like other international teams. I know Papua New Guinea obviously runs rugby leagues, that's a fair example, but I just think you've got to try and like broaden your horizons a little bit. And yeah, it's just tough because like at the start it's not going to look great and it's probably going to dilute the quality of the competition, but you just got to try your hardest, I suppose.
Well, we won't get into the politics of should PNG be the next team in, Nick, but you wouldn't want to be a poor old Bears fan. I mean, they were celebrating coming back to the competition and they've had 25 years. They got stiffed by Manly and they're coming back in Perth and now it's on the back burner again, it looks like.
I couldn't believe that when that came out in the media that Volandis came out and said they've jumped the gun, celebrating too early, and it was like a day or two later they came and shut it down.
It's just a power play by him, maybe, to get him to raise the bid or get some different owners or whatever around it.
Sounds a bit like that, doesn't it? Really disappointing. But what Declan was just saying about the quality of players, running thin out into to the ranks when you talked about expansion. I mean, we've got a couple of halves that we could probably offload right now. We've got Bud and Adam Dewey that could easily jump out to a Bears or a PNG team. So I think there's plenty of quality players out there to for us to get rid of straight away. So
we could ship half our roster to PNG, Nick. It'd be wonderful.
We could.
Tigers related rant. So that was Steve's one. That was a long answer we gave there. Steve, mine is not going to be about the membership, even though they got my name right this year on the email. So that was a start. They didn't get my address right. They've combined it with my mate's address. So that was interesting, but it's progress. My name's right this year. So I thought, let's not bag them about that. But my rant is going to be around the awards night. Like, I know this will sound a bit, maybe a bit off, but how does Lockie Galvin not win Players' Player or Player of the Year, best and fairest, whatever the two are? Like, surely he has to win one of them. Our biggest thing in the next year is keeping that boy at the club. And if you're going to bring politics in it, bring it in for this award. Let him win one of them. I mean, he was our best player anyway, so I'm not saying he should be elevated if he wasn't our best player, but I just found that. Like, who are these? Are the players just voting for their mates in Appy or something? Keep Appy happy? Like, Appy I thought he was ordinary the last 3 months, considering how good he was in his first season at the club.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to be negative towards Lockie Galvin. He's 18 years of age, kid, played full season of first grade and was one of our best players all season. But I do think, and I hadn't said this a lot, but I do think he had a fairly significant lull mid-season. Like, he started off really strong when no one basically knew him. And then he got into the grind. And around that time where there was the talk of was he going to stay or go, or that sort of thing, I think that probably affected him a little bit. He was out there and he was playing good football, but he had a lull for a number of weeks. So I reckon a good 6-week period. And then he came back and he finished the year like an absolute gun. And he is a gun and he's a champion. And I agree with you, mate. Like, if you're going to give it to anyone, if you're going to rig it for anyone, rig it for him. But Fainu played consistent footy all year. And, you know, often was an unsung hero in the toughness that he played with. So I didn't have a problem with it.
I'm a big Sam Weller fan, Steve, as everyone knows, but I thought Sam had a bit of a lull towards the end of the season too. I thought his last couple of games were quite strong, but probably with about half a dozen rounds to go, I think he had a month of, I won't say ordinary football, but he just wasn't as much of a standout as he had been throughout the year earlier in the season. That's my opinion anyway.
Declan, am I reading too much into this? I just think, you know, these Gen Z kids, they like winning awards, and we've got a sorry, that wasn't a shot at you, but probably felt like it. But he's got that, you know, horrible manager, Isaac Moses, and he's going to be doing everything possible to get him out of the club. And just, you know, I just thought it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I think that with these things, you know, we had a terrible season. Like, how much does this award really mean in the grand scheme of things? And, you know, like, I think Lockie Galvin, he's shown that he can be a little bit susceptible to being in the moment, and just like give an award like that, like tactically, it just makes tons of sense, because I do think he was our best player all season. Yes, like, he wasn't like great every week, but, you know, for a 19-year-old now, like, that's, you know, a hard task. And I don't know, just giving him that award, it just may have, you know, put in his mind, oh, you know, like, things are pretty good, Jerome's coming in the preseason, you know, I kind of want to stay here long term, they appreciate me. And then obviously Samuel Afano, he's really good as well, but he's locked down for, you know, he's got 3 years left. He's not going anywhere anytime soon. Just tactically, I don't see why you wouldn't just give it to Galvin, because we've seen it rigged for players in the past where we're like, hang on, like, I don't know how they got it. So I'm not sure why they wouldn't just do it again this season. It just, yeah, I just think it was an opportunity missed.
Nick, have you got a Tigers related rant for me?
Well, I mean, we're all in a group chat. We all know what's been spoken about, especially heavily today. A lot of talk about the roster mismanagement, some certain players on long contracts, you know, that are potentially taking up roster spots for positions that we really need to fill with, you know, more quality players. So I guess my rant is, and I'm kind of holding back a little bit, because, you know, I've said on a couple of pods previously that I'm really waiting for those trees to start shaking during this period, anywhere from between now and sort of January, February, to see what might happen in terms of player movement, because I know that we've got, and it's been in the media, right? There's been a lot of reports about Adam Doueihi now linked with St George. We've heard about Bateman possibly being linked with Manly. And I know Bateman's on decent money. Doueihi's not on huge cash for next year especially, but I guess they're players that you're talking about probably don't quite fit in our best, I guess, 17 going to the next season. And there's probably a couple of positions. I know we've talked about, I know Steve and also Gary talked about getting a decent prop in, a really hard running prop for next season to complement, or to probably to add on to what Royce Hunt will bring. But I think there's some positional movement that needs to happen. So yeah, for me, I'm just getting a little bit frustrated with, I guess, not a lot happening. A few rumours here and there on social media, but yeah, just waiting for something to fall out of the tree so we can start get a bit of a better look at what our 17 is going to look like for next season. We
will dive into that in depth around roster movement. But Nick, that tree outside Concord, it doesn't shake. You know, it's a worry. You know,
it's a big one.
Windy the last week. I've been hoping it'd shake, but we might need a few more people down there to shake it.
We might have to. I actually drove past Concord a couple of weeks ago, and it's a massive tree. It's huge. When they did all that renovation, that tree's still standing. So
it's not like the tree in Penrith where you get superstars fall out of it. But Steve, what was it?
So the only positive around that comment, Nick, that I can think of is that the tree is being shook, but we're not hearing it, right? And in the past, every single thing that happens around Concord, you hear about in chapter and verse before it actually happens, right? And so maybe the leaks have been plugged and they've moved to Newcastle, and maybe it's all happening behind closed doors. That's the only way we can look at it. But we've said this before. The concerning part is that Richardson did go to the UK to shake the tree, and it doesn't appear that anything happened there. And he's going to prove himself in this next few months. And we keep saying that because if something significant doesn't happen, we are in a bit of strife for next season, I reckon.
Declan, your Tigers-related rant?
Well, I'm not going to lie, you did steal mine for the awards thing. So I do have a backup one, but I can't say my heart's completely in it. But I just think that, the whole John Bateman situation, we're another situation where we're falling out with a senior player that we're trying to kick out the club, and it's going to become a massive, big thing in the preseason. Like, all that the attention's on it's like negative headlines. Richardson's come out, like everyone is basically just like hiding, like not exactly saying it, but pretty much saying that, it's heading for divorce. And I just hate the fact that it's played out in the media. And I know that Richardson wasn't here when John Bateman signed, but when he did sign, it's not like we didn't know that John Bateman was someone who wasn't scared to like talk his mind. Like, he was one of those personalities that, is like a bit fiery, like will challenge people. He did that at Wigan. He fell out with Ricky Stewart at Canberra for like similar reasons, and then he fell out with Wigan again. So it's just so frustrating that we signed a guy like we probably like said to him, we want you to challenge people and set standards, and then we've fallen out with again. Sent him to England, like he's like has the shits with the club, and he's on big money. He's coming back, and it's just like another North Limmer situation where it's going to be just like completely contradictory to like a really positive preseason. I'm just annoying.
Well, boys, we'll come back at the end of the show to the non-Tigers related rant because Declan's led us into talking about John Bateman, which was the next thing we were going at. But Declan, I don't want to, dive into the rabbit hole around Stefano, but do you have a little bit more sympathy for John Bateman, given you feel that someone like Stefano, it's more a cultural issue at the club where we can't get senior players to perform, or they often, they're not saying they give up, but they just don't produce, or they badmouth the club?
I mean, I think with John Bateman, like he does have like a tinge of a history of falling out with coaches. So like you'd have to think maybe that was the case, and Benji just doesn't have the experience to like sort him out and keep him on side. But yeah, with like Stefano, like you've got to say, he said he wanted to stay at the club at the start of the season. Maybe that was just, like just trying to like tell us what we wanted to hear. But when all these players, when Tedesco and Moses, when like basically every player leaves and ends up in a different system, and they end up like playing better or reaching their potential, you've got to start looking at like what's actually in the club, and is it our fault? Because I'm just so sick and tired of just being angry at players for leaving and like being on the club side, because obviously we're fans, we're going to take the club side no matter what. But I think eventually to learn the lesson, you've got to start saying, well, maybe Stefano left because we're the issue, and we have to address that and change it so that the next players that come along, they're not going to want to leave because they're going to want to stay here because they're going to genuinely think that this is where I'm going to become my best. So I do have sympathy for like the senior players now, because clearly there's a problem, and clearly like it's too hard for some guys, and it sucks for me saying that as a fan, but if you look at the evidence, like it's undeniable at this point.
Yeah, I think you're 100% on the money there, Declan. Like, I think as fans, we can tend to oversimplify it. We just look at it as black and white, or right and wrong, whereas there's so many shades of grey and so many layers to this. Like, I've given it to Bateman, and I'm really disappointed in him. I think he should bear a lot of responsibility for the attitude that he's ended up with, right? I also think Stefano dogged it pretty badly in a lot of situations this year and gave up on himself and the club, and he needs to take responsibility for that. But that doesn't mean that the opposite is not true also. And that's at the club, as well, I'm just repeating Declan, so I won't go into it in much detail, but we've just got this history of not bringing out the best in players and not being able to get the best out of recruits. And it's continuing. And I'm not absolving Bateman of blame. I'm not absolving Stefano of blame. But if we wanted to sit down before our next pod and write a list, I reckon we could probably come up with 30 names of players that we've got to this club that have underachieved in the last decade. And we need to fix that. And I agree. I agree that we are trying to do that, and the club is making moves to do that. But far out, man, it can't keep happening. It's got to be fixed now.
I mean, it's really scary because look at someone like Tommy Talau, and he wasn't in anyone's starting 17 when he was with us, but now he's playing for Manly on the wing, playing finals footy, and he's playing on the wing in a position that we could have really used him for. But he just when he was at the club, he was a little bit overweight. There was all that talk about him. Is he a back rower? Is he a centre? What is he? And you could tell that he never quite prepared for one set position, based on his off season, because he was carrying that weight. But then as soon as he gets to Manly, they're like, all right, you're an outside back, you're a winger. He slims down, and he's a genuine first grader who contributes to a finals footy team. So it's just I think, as Steve said, there's countless examples of this, and it's not just the superstars either. It's the kind of bog of the mill first graders as well that just go on. Luke Garner, for example, he's a 2-time premiership winner now, but with us, it's coming off the bench or at centre. So we're just we're the anti-Melbourne Storm. We just make players worse. We don't make them better, and then they go on to have solid careers elsewhere.
I think Luke Garner, Tommy Talau, even Luke Brooks are good examples of players that we had at our club that went into better structures and fitted and simply went there to do a role. Whereas
and played with better players as well, Nick.
Correct, yeah, better players, better structures, and went to do a job, and I think it was probably simplified, makes it a bit easier for them when they run out in the field. I just wonder with players like John Bateman, when they come to the Tigers, even we saw it with Appy the back half of this season, he was trying it too hard. He was trying so hard, he started to look a little bit tired, and not the Appy that we saw, the first year and a half that he was wearing our jersey. But I don't know. There's also arguments too with players like, James Tedesco. Tedesco was playing Origin when he was at West Tigers. Aaron Woods, I think, was probably playing his best football at West Tigers, and I think he declined or deteriorated after he left. His career really fell apart when he went to the Bulldogs. So there's a few exceptions, but Tigers.
Yeah, I think that there's something he said about, someone like Tommy Talau, he's signed for a 2-year deal. He's not really expected to do anything. They have expectations for him, but it's not like he's come there to be a marquee signer or anything. But then I also think there's something we said about him, how much weight he shredded and how fit he looks compared to when he was with us. And then Sean Bloor saying how, he thought training with the Tigers was really, really tough. But then, he gets to the Melbourne Storm and, he nearly faints of exhaustion. And that's just culture and standards, which is just something that, we always talk about. But, obviously, the Melbourne Storm, they do it better than anyone else. So it might be a bit unfair to, compare the Tigers. But that's just what you need to do to be regularly successful. So, yeah, it's just tough. And it's just so sad to see that, someone like Sean Bloor says, you can clearly see the difference in training and attitude and all that stuff. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of both for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we've had arguments about this on the chat, Steve, and I'm probably a little bit on the other side of the fence where I just, I look at a guy like Appy and his attitude hasn't changed since he come to Penrith. Sure, he's not winning as many games, but, you could put David Nofaluma on the wing for Manly. He's going to play finals football. Big deal. Okay, they're like Nick said, they're in a better structure with better players, and okay, their attitude might have improved. But, I don't want to speak for Gary, but what's the thing with Stefano? Can you say he's someone you're going to build around if he's just going to throw the towel in halfway through the season? There has to be some personal accountability for some of these guys for me.
Absolutely. And that's why I preface what I was saying with the fact that it's not simple. It's not black and white. It's not right and wrong. It's not you're 100% correct or you're 100% wrong. I agree. Stefano showed, in my opinion, some character flaws. You look at blokes that you want to go out and stand in a defensive line with, and you're looking across him and he's taking an easy option. You think, well, I don't know whether I want to stand next to this bloke in a defensive line, and he's now got to rebuild that and rebuild the trust with his new teammates, I'd imagine, because there are a lot of people, not just Tigers fans, there are a lot of people giving him a hard time. A lot of commentators were giving him a hard time at the end of the season and making comment about his perceived lack of effort. So, yeah, you're not wrong, Eddie. I have never said that I think that's an incorrect argument. I'm just saying I don't think we have the ability to bring out, to sit him down and say, mate, this is where you're going wrong and it's worth changing. It's worth staying here and making the changes you need to make to be the forward leader you said you're going to be. Like, I bet you any money that Wayne Bennett would be able to sit down with him on a one-on-one and take his game apart, reflect on what he said at the beginning of the season, and then get the best out of him. We're not able to do that, and so it just got worse and worse and worse, and he gave up and he found a better option, which is, of course, almost any other club apart from us at the moment. That's what we're not capable of doing. So that's where I stand on it.
I just think it's just like if the Melbourne Storm are keen on him, then they've obviously seen something in him that shows that he's got, some sort of character, because they wouldn't be interested in him otherwise. Like, they only go for, like, the recruitment is famous for, like, never missing. And, whatever magic formula they have, like, there must be something that Stefano's ticked when he's talked to them. And that's just the biggest problem for me, is the fact that, like, he's good enough for the Melbourne Storm, but we can't seem to bring out those qualities in a player of that caliber, someone who's got origin level talent. And until we, like, bring the best out of the players we have in our system already, then we're just going to go in circles.
Well, I'm diving all over the place a bit here, but I was going to bring up later, but you raised it a minute ago, Declan, the difference, and I'll ask Nick, in training and fitness standards. And we don't really know, but I'd really love to know that players that, there's quotes from Sean Bloor there about the different levels of intensity and training and accountability there at Melbourne Storm. And that starts, I'm sure, on the 1st of November, or even before you walk in the door. And we hear all the, the fluff about, we've had a tough off season at the Tigers and blah, blah, blah. But I saw a little interesting one on one of the forums. It was from Joel Kane was talking about when Tim Sheens was in charge, and he was probably still at the club back then in about 2003. And he said Tim Sheens actually brought in 3 blokes from outside the top 30 at the Roosters. I think one was Luke Milton, one was Trent Clayton, and one other dude. And they weren't going to play first grade, but he said Joel Kane said they ran 1, 2, 3 in the beep test on day one and just completely shredded all of our first graders. And apparently Robbie Farah, when he came back to the Tigers from South in 2018, and this is when, I think under Cleary was going to say, Robbie, you don't have to do all the preseason or whatnot. He won all the fitness. He would have been 33 or 34 then. So to Declan and Steve's point, maybe the club has to look long and hard at, are we giving these players the best opportunity to be successful, even just around our basic preseason? Are these anywhere near the levels of a Melbourne or a Penrith, even though they do have far, far better players?
Everything points to the fact that we're not anywhere near the same level, doesn't it? It smells like that. I started thinking about culture, when Declan was talking about Melbourne Storm and, what Bellamy saw in Stefano and Sean Bloor, and they go down there and, Stefano almost like we go to a new level like Bloor has. Bloor looks like he's going to be representative for the way he's playing for the Storm. But just makes you wonder whether, and that's my concern with most players, not all. I think Luai might be an exception, but most players that come to the Tigers just have that in the back of their mind that they're coming to the Tigers. They're coming to a team that perennial losers. Standards are likely not as high as other clubs. We're going to do our best, but you get to a point where John Bateman's been here for a couple of years, and I think he's just got to a point where he's so frustrated.
I think, Nick, they come with the best of intentions, don't they? But it's like almost Adam Blair. He said, I just got completely lost at the Tigers. It'd come across as no effort, but he said, I couldn't understand the game plan, or I didn't know what, that was back when Benji was sort of running the team. But
yeah,
I think they do come with the best of intentions usually, but then it goes south.
Completely agree. I think Bateman's whole mentality went south midway through this season. Even the way that he plays, I know he's a very individualistic player, John Bateman, but he kind of did look like a chicken with his head cut off towards the back end of the year. So, and obviously he wasn't fitting into what Benji was trying to build, and that created that that breakdown in the sheds, which led to him walking out. And within a week he was back in the club behind our back over in the UK. So. It's really tough. I really do. And I've said it before. I really hope that when Luai arrives, he's going to bring a new standard. And I love the way he talks in the media. I know he was interviewed last weekend. I saw him on the news saying, that he knows he's got another level in him. And he knows he's got a lot more improvement in him. And he wants to bring that winning culture with him. It's interesting. I read between the lines. He hasn't actually said West Tigers in his interviews yet. He just talks about when I get there and all that sort of thing. So, I can't wait to see him walk in, put the colours on, and become fully fledged Tiger.
Just on in a comparison to the John Bateman situation, if Nelson Asafa-Solomona at the start of the season or the off season, he came back to the Storm unfit, and he was just behind the entire preseason, and he didn't play the first few rounds for the Storm, and he had to work his way back from New South Wales Cup for the Bears to the bench. Now, if that happened at the West Tigers, where he, like Nelson Asafa-Solomona, he was playing for us and he came back unfit, he probably would have started the year in first grade, or he would have just kicked the can and wanted a release, and it would have all played out in the media because we just don't have the structures in place to be able to manage these kind of horror personalities like John Bateman, Nelson Asafa-Solomona.
We also don't have the roster though, Declan, to put him in reserve grade, really.
Yeah, but that's a different decision. That's to set standards. I don't know. I remember when Ivan Cleary first came here and he picked Corey Thompson over David Nofoaluma. And obviously David Nofoaluma at the time was a much better player than Corey Thompson in terms of talent. But Corey Thompson just ticked off all the boxes in terms of culture and ethics. And
he also picked that round one team. If you look back, he picked Peter Godinate, hooker. I think he picked Robbie Rocco in the back row. That team won 12 games. So that's probably speaking to your point as well.
Yeah. And I just think that if Nelson Asafa-Solomona was here, then we just wouldn't have been able to handle that big personality. And I think the same thing is happening with John Bateman. We just don't have either, if it's the coaching staff or the senior group, to keep someone like that in line and get the best out of him, because Naz played a really big role for the Storm at the back end of the season. Yes, he got suspended in the grand final and he missed that, but he really did turn it around. He was really good for them towards the end of the year. But with John Bateman, it's the opposite. He's played in England, he's played for another club, and now he's begrudgingly coming back because he wants to get his money that he's owed from his contract. It's just apples and oranges between the Storm and the Tigers with this sort of stuff.
Last thing, Steve, on this, culture versus underperforming players, because we're looking at the blueprint, Storm and Penrith, and that's a pretty tough blueprint to reach. But there's also another blueprint I look at Canterbury, and they had some bad eggs, and they just went, righto, see you later. See you later to the whole roster. And that was assistant coaches, that was senior players, and they brought in guys that were not necessarily big name players, but guys that were going to work hard. So I just think, to me, I think, okay, I understand that Stefano and that might not have been in the best position, but I think we just got to clean some of these guys out.
Well, it's the psychology of winning. I agree. Who have you got to clean out? You've got to clean out the ones that aren't going to aspire to the standards that the club is going to set for success. And I know it sounds so cliche, but it's so true. I just cannot wait. I think it's available now. I cannot wait to get out there and buy that book from Ivan Cleary because it's all going to be about the psychology of winning, what they do at Penrith, what he does as a coach, or what's the book called? Not Everything Matters, but Everything Matters, or something like that. And it's such a poignant notion, right? That every single thing you do, the way you act, the way you behave. I can remember walking into the Tigers. Admittedly, it was back before the Centre of Excellence, but walking into the front office there, and there were boxes that were left, and they were half open, and stuff was half unpacked, and the place just looked like crap, right? And if you've got an environment that looks like crap and it looks mediocre, then what you're sending a message of mediocrity out to everyone within that organisation. Absolutely everything you do has got to be of excellent standard. Like, I know you've got that story of the All Blacks cleaning up their dressing rooms. But Nathan Cleary has told the same story, that he hangs around and cleans up the shit. He got it from the All Blacks, from reading the All Blacks literature. It's that psychology of winning that we just have to permeate through our club from the absolute top right through. And we don't have it yet. We might be on our way. I don't know. I hope we are. I'd like to think we are. But, you know, we need a coaching staff. We need admin. We need everyone that's not going to accept anything but absolute excellence ever.
On Bateman specifically, Declan, there's been some news the last day or so that Manly Power Brokers are considering a move for him. He's got 2 years left on his Tigers deal at $650K. It's been, you know, not widely reported, but it's pretty well known. Looks like the Tigers would be happy to see him elsewhere. Would you be prepared to, you know, pay half his salary to play elsewhere for 2 years, or do you think that's further weakening the roster?
I think it is weakening the roster because I don't know who's going to play right back edge for us. Like, he's probably still in my starting team, but at the same time, I think it's a pretty volatile situation at the moment, and I think having him there at the start of pre-season would be like more detrimental than beneficial. So yeah, I do think, like, for the interest of both parties, I would be moving him on, and then I'd be willing to pay like a significant part of his wage. Probably not, probably half. I'd probably say anything more than that, it's probably not worth it at that point. But yeah, I think trying to get him to another club, free up a roster spot, and just trying to like have a amicable divorce would probably be the best thing for both parties.
Where do you sit on Bateman, Nick? Has to go before round one, or are you willing to reconcile?
A few weeks ago, I was willing to reconcile, but to be honest, I think he's better gone. It would free up a roster spot. I'd be interested to see what could happen if we freed one up. But just on what you're saying, Declan, who would you prefer in the back row? John Bateman or Alex Seyfarth? Because I know who I'd pick. Wouldn't be Bateman.
Yeah, I think I would pick Seyfarth for sure. But that's probably, taken away from Seyfarth's strength, because I think he played his best footy coming off the bench for us. But, there's nothing to, like, there could be the argument that he could grow into that position as well. And he's a good worker. He's probably not the straight back row that we're kind of all hoping for, but, you could do a lot worse than someone like Seyfarth, I think. Yeah.
Guys, we just talked for 5 minutes about setting the culture and getting the culture right. So it's a lay down misère, mate. Like, I agree. We don't want Alex Seyfarth as a starting back rower, but I'd take his attitude over Bateman's any day of the week at the moment. It's not even a question. Unless Bateman had an absolute turnaround in attitude, which I don't think he's capable of, there's just no way he fits into what the club's trying to achieve.
Well, Gary's trying to sell him for nothing, Steve, so we might have issues there. So he might not be available at the start of the season if Gary had his way. Yeah.
Like a dog with a bone, Gary. He won't give poor old Alex now. He's trying to trade him. But yeah, for me, it's not simple. But for me, if I was in charge, Nick, which would be a big worry if I was in charge, but it's very simple. He's gone. He is a cancer, that bloke. I'm sorry, that sounds very harsh, but he's taken multiple shots at the club on Instagram. He put on a long, war and peace spiel about how he rejuvenated his love for the game in England. I thought, mate, send that to the English club. Don't put it on your Instagram. Just go back to England or go to Manly, because you know what will happen? He'll come back in pre-season. He'll be all smiles. And then as soon as you lose 2 or 3 in a row, the leopard doesn't change its spots. He's shown what his character is. And for me, he doesn't, as Richo says, a crocodile rock or roll or whatever he calls it? He doesn't roll part of it, mate. So let's get him out the door. I don't care what it costs.
I agree, Eddie, and I actually think you'd probably make a really good manager of football. And if you were manager of football or in there somewhere in the office, would you give Gary a role in the coaching positions? Because he fancies himself as a coach, Gary.
Gary fancies himself as CEO and manager and every role in the clubs. But yeah, I'm with you on that one, Steve. I just think there's no coming back. I think he's a better footballer than Alex Seyfarth, John Bateman. I think he'd do well in a good club, or a club that's a bit stronger players at the moment, but he's not for what we've got at the moment, in my opinion. Boys, let's talk a little bit more about the roster spots. That tree at Concord, it's unfortunately still sitting in it. Steve, is Adam Dewey, Brent Naden, Charlie Staines, Bud Sullivan, Alex Twal, Brendan Toomuth, Stafford Toa, and Tony Suka. And I'm sure, those guys, they're all made it to the NRL, so they're far better footballers than we're ever going to be. But unfortunately for me, that's a roster that's way been out of shape.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're asking for our move?
Yeah, go for your move. Your one big move.
Well, one big move in 3 parts.
Okay.
Well, one big move in 3 parts.
It's a big trade, is it?
Yeah, no, Bateman out, Fainu in, Sony Fainu in, right? Straight swap there.
Yep.
But, all right, Sullivan out with prop in, either Rudolph or a Sofa Solomona. Dewey out and a back rower in. Have no idea who. That's what we need. We do that. We do that one big move in 3 parts. We'll make the 8.
Are you strong on AD being out as Bateman? That same reason?
No, a little bit. I don't like the way he verbalizes or had verbalized last season, but more so, I just think superfluous to needs at the moment, right?
Nick, what's your big roster move? You're now Nick Richardson.
Nick Richardson, a little bit lighter, I'd like to think at the moment. Anyway, I hadn't actually written anything down. I agree with what Steve's saying. I think there's probably 3 key players I would like to see shuffle around. Nelson Asafa Solomona, I don't know what the story with him is for next year. I know he's put out a couple of cryptic posts on Instagram as well, that his time is up or the new chapter's starting. I don't know exactly what that means, but I have heard his name mentioned a couple of times as a possibility that we're still looking at him. I don't know what the likelihood of that is, but I would love someone like him to come across. Even though he's sitting out the first, 5 games next season, I think he'd be the type of prop that we could really benefit with experience-wise. He's a hard nut. I'd love to see him come across. I don't know if it could happen.
Declan, what's your transfer market look like?
So I think, you've got the obvious ones, guys like Bud Sullivan, Naden, and then Charlie Staines. So just probably, you want to move them on, and I think we all agree. But I think my 2 kind of ones that I think that could happen and we should prioritize. I think obviously Adam Dewey to the Dragons, because I just think that I think Adam's time here is over. I think
love affair's over, Declan, didn't it?
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, I've never hated Adam Dewey as much as everyone else. It's I don't know, maybe it's because we're the same age, but his antics never really bothered me that much. But I just think in terms of the half depth we have at the moment and the opening of the Dragons, the fact that we need a roster spot, I think it's just perfect for both parties. I'm not sure how Dragons fans would feel about Ben Hunt being replaced by Adam Dewey, but apparently they're interested. And then just we said before, just John Bateman, getting him somewhere else, because I just don't want another David Nofflima situation where it becomes toxic when preseason starts. I just think that everyone needs to be on the same page, and if you're not on the same page, then you really shouldn't be there.
How do we get rid of Bud? Because this has been killing me for a while. And I know I was talking about it in the group chat. But to me, honestly, I think it's up there with one of the worst contracts we've ever signed. It's up there with the Adam Blair one.
Look like we're bidding ourselves, though. Which other club seriously would have offered him 500 or 600K for 4 years?
No one. You're right.
We're desperate, but desperate clubs make those mistakes, don't they? I wouldn't have had a problem if it was a 2-year deal. I
think we'd backed ourselves into a corner because Brooksy left. Brooksy wasn't happy with the revised offer.
We had no halves, but
we had Wakeham was a dud. He was he worse than Bud?
Yeah.
If not, they'd be a cracking halves pair, those two. But we'd backed ourselves into a corner. We had no one to wear a 6 or a 7 this season, and it was a reflex signing. Towards the end of last year, or whenever it happened. 4 years at 500 or 2 years at 500 and then 2 at 600 for a guy that hadn't even established himself at the Dragons. It's ridiculous. But he's just that's a massive hangover that's going to be on our cap for the next 3 years, and I don't know how we get rid of it.
Sounds bad, Nick, because no one's going to pick up that contract or even half of it, I don't think. But can you just play hardball and say, mate, you're not training with the first team? That's a bad way to treat people. Because he signed a 4-year deal in good faith, but I got the feeling they were trending that way a little bit last year, because apparently my mate who goes out and watches the State Cup side said, Sullivan and Naden occasionally had a cracking game, but they would never considered for the back half a year at selection. I just think we've got to be hardball. Those guys, you can stay on the roster. you're not playing first grade and you're not training with first grade. Declan?
Yeah, I think especially with someone like Bud Sullivan, he's still young and he's still got a lot of footy in him. So I think that it comes to a point where he can say, okay, yes, I can sit on this money, and I'm definitely like contractually like obligated to get this money, but I need to look at like what happens after this contract. So maybe that could open a few doors if he's willing to take a little bit less to get an opportunity to benefit his long-term future. Because, like he can sell on the money now, like he's entitled to do that, but like he hasn't proven himself yet. And with all the halves we have at the moment, that's not likely going to change the Tigers anytime soon. So it might be in his best interest, maybe either this season or next season, to cut his losses and go like look somewhere else for like actual first grade.
Yeah, but I think if he does that, Declan, he's going to have to look overseas, because I just don't think he's good enough. He's not going to get a starting spot. Like, he can stay at the Tigers on good money, sit in reserve grade if that's what he's happy to do. If he wants to play first grade, he's not going to do it in the NRL at this stage. From what we've seen, I don't think. I can't think of a club.
Maybe the new team, Steve, but that's a couple of years away.
Maybe the new squads when they start to pick them. And I reckon that's obviously why Richardson went overseas, and that was unsuccessful too. Whether it was unsuccessful from the overseas clubs or from Sullivan, I don't know.
This is where I do have a little bit of sympathy for him, because he signed, as Eddie said, on a 4-year deal, and then we signed Luai. So the landscape just completely shifted on him before he'd really even set a door in the new club. So he hasn't even really had like a solid opportunity to prove himself in NRL for us. Yes, like, I agree. Like, when he has played, he hasn't really been convincing, and he hasn't really taken his chances. But if that was me in that situation, and then they signed Luai, like Lachlan Galvin shoots up, well, like my confidence would be at an all-time low, because like I know that these guys don't actually back me, and maybe he is just that kind of confidence player. Now, it doesn't really solve the situation of how you get rid of him, but yeah, I do have a little bit of sympathy for him, because everything changed before he really even had a chance to play for us.
I agree with what you're saying, Declan. I guess I think about Bud in this season. I think when Lockie Galvin in the first couple of weeks showed what he could do, he was going to be a lock-in for one of those half spots for 2024. But Bud never really even shook the tree enough to get in front of Aiden Caesar. Whenever Caesar was available, he was the one chosen for the halves. And then as the season progressed and as Latu battled through his hamstring injuries, and then he started getting the nod in the halves towards the back end of the year. And I think it's pretty clear. I'm pretty sure I've heard some rumblings or heard some rumours that Benji's told Bud he's likely not going to play, at top level with us. So, it's just a really awkward one. It's just a lot of money to be holding on to it, another 3 years. I wish Bud all the best, but yeah, I think like Steve said, I don't think it's going to be happening at Tigers.
Well, boys, no one's mentioned my roster move, so I'm excited now. Does Richardson return emails, Steve, or not? Richardson, yeah. I like that. It's stubborn, but I might. You can find his phone number. I might give him a call, because I think this roster move is worth considering. But before I get to it, I'm just going to throw some names at Declan, and just give me a yes, no, or maybe, Declan. These are guys that are off contract the end of next year, but have some of them have been floated around for various clubs. Josh Adokar?
No.
Adam Elliott?
Yes.
Selwyn Cobbo?
Yes.
Kai Pearce-Paul?
Yes.
Origin Kafusi? It's not Origin Kafusi.
Origin
Kafusi.
Oregon.
It'd be good if he played Origin, Steve. Origin Kafusi. It's not quite Ken Marmalade, but it's not as close.
Yeah.
Yes, Origin Kafusi.
Yeah, I think he took up his option though for Cronulla, so he's off contract the end of next year. But I wouldn't be like, I don't think he's that good, but I think if I was to take him like for next season, I'd say yes. Okay. But yeah,
Leo Thompson, Knights.
Yes, but I think unrealistic, because there's going to be like 8 clubs chasing him.
Matt Croker, Knights.
Yes, in a top 30 spot, but not starting.
James Tedesco, Roosters.
No.
Why?
Oh, like what benefit? I just don't. Well, I can't see it ever happening because I think he's going to retire a Rooster. And then B, yes, he'd be good for culture, but like if the Roosters let go of him, like he's going to be well and truly past it. Like his body will be out. And yeah, I would rather us build something with a young player. And then at least with someone like Clint Gutherson, like you could play him in another position, but with Tedesco, I can't see him playing any other position. So he would have to play fullback and he could block a young player. And plus he left us as well. So, I have a long memory, so I'm still not quite over that one.
Yeah, we all got long memories. Last one, Grant Anderson, Melbourne Storm. Centre /
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's a few names there. I mean, none of them are off contract at the moment, but they were the ones I picked out of the ones off contract at the end of 25. But my one, boys, I'm going to have to sell this one to you because I know it's not that popular, but we spent the last 3 hours talking about culture and winners and trying to change training standards. And it's clear to me at this club we don't have leaders. They might say they're leaders or they might be senior in age, but we don't have many leaders. And I look at Clint Gutherson. He's not the most popular bloke. And yes, he might be slowing down a little bit, but I would pay him. I'd pay him 700,000 or 800,000 for 2 years, Steve, and I'd play him at fullback. And I'd say, mate, you come in. You played. I know he's had some success, but he's a competitor. He's a real competitor. And okay, I know Gary's got worries about his knees, but he's played a lot of footy the last 5 years. I just think he'd be great for our club. For someone like Jareen Buller, who is going to be the long-term fullback, I think. And people think I hate him, but I just think someone like that is, to me, what the Sharks did with someone like Dale Finucane, who was broken when he left Melbourne as a player, but they still speak highly of him. And he barely finished his second season. He retired medically, but he lifted the whole standards around training and culture. And I think we've got to look a little bit beyond talent and beyond exactly what position we need and get some dudes that are winners in the club. And I know he can rub people the wrong way, Gutherson, but I would have no doubt that he'd be the priority for me.
You don't have to sell it to me. I'd take Gutho tomorrow. Yeah, there's the possibility that he's busted. I don't know. That's the job of the club to do the work they need to do to make sure he's capable of playing footy at first grade level. The only point I disagree with you on is I wouldn't play him at fullback. I'd be keeping Buller there. It would be nice to know that if Buller doesn't come on, that there's someone like Gutho sitting in the wings to go back to fullback if we needed it, because I don't think Taruva is the answer after watching him the other night. But I would definitely have Gutho here, and I'd have him in lock-in in the centres.
I think the issue I'd have, Steve, is would it be attractive to come and play centre for us?
Well, you're not bringing him in just as a centre. You bring him in as a club leader,
Yeah.
and you pay him as a club leader. Yep. So you do exactly what you say. You pay him the 700-800 that he's worth as a fullback, play him at centre with all the added benefits that he brings to the club. Now I'm saying that without knowing how a salary cap gets managed, right? So
we got money to spend, though, don't we, Declan?
I mean, yeah, but
the roster spots are the issue.
Yeah. Roster spots are definitely the issue. And Ted Machines really didn't do a great service, did he, with all those young players coming into the top 30. But with Gutherson, the rumour is that the Dragons have offered him 2 years to play fullback. So would you, Eddie, give him that third year? Because that would be, it would come. Yes. So you would give him the third year.
Gary will hate me saying this, but Shane Flanagan knows what he's doing, mate. He's getting some senior guys in there that are winners. He's got Damien Cook in there, and these guys might be a little bit past their best, but he's trying to change a culture there. So, look, 3 years, if it gets him over the line, I would do it. And yes, it's probably 1 year too many. And even if he doesn't play that third year and his knees are crook, I think he'll prove his weight. Nick?
Speaking of knees, we were talking about Gutherson, might have been a week or so ago in the forum, and I can't remember who it was. One of the posters on the forum said if we signed Gutherson, we should turn part of Centre of Excellence into a hospital for him and Olam to sit there side by side.
I mean, that's true, but Olam, I don't think, not being disrespectful, Nick, but he was never come in to be a club culture changer. He's never been a captain of a first grade side for 7 or 8 years like Gutherson has, and been he's had success in his career.
I get that.
That's the difference when they bought, when Sharks went in and bought Finucane. He was a leader at training.
Yeah, I'm still sweating on a healthy Olam for round one next season. I don't know how likely that is, but we really do need him.
So, Eddie, would you sign Gutherson for 3 years if you thought that was going to mean we're going to lose Jareen Buller to another club? Like, would his manager comes in and agitates for a release because he's
I mean, that's a good question, but I'm looking at Jareen's personality. I don't think he would do that. But if hypothetically, I'd have to think about that one. I don't know if I could give you an answer on the spot, but I do think it would benefit him because all the little aspects of his game, like he's a better athlete than Gutherson already. Gutherson's probably on the downhill, but all the things Gutherson could teach him around organising defensive lines and talking the line and stuff like that would be invaluable for me. So I would risk losing Jareen Buller, Steve, for a 3rd year for Gutherson.
Wow. Okay. I wouldn't, but I'd have him at the club for every other thing you've said.
How long is he under contract, Declan, Jareen Buller?
Let me just have a look.
Another 2 years, I think.
No, it'd be longer than that, I think.
Okay.
I think he re-signed for like 4 years.
Yeah. Jareen Buller's got a mutual offer 2027.
Okay. Well, I'm interested to know what the some of the listeners think about that. I've got a pretty strong take on Gutherson, and maybe I'll be completely wrong. I think he will probably end up at St George. I just think he'd be a good fit for our club. Boys, let's finish with buy, sell, hold. Nick, if you do have to jump off, you can jump off. We won't be offended if you disappear. You've got some work calls to do at 9:30. This is a movie-length episode of the podcast. It's my last one before March, so we're fitting everything in, mate. Question 1, Steve. Api Coruscant.
So hang on. Before you start, this is buy, sell, hold. This is not the Aldi version, which is the exact same thing, just rebranded.
What I don't understand about the good, the bad, and the ugly is it's essentially the good, the bad, and the worst. Like it's two things.
The bad and the ugly are the same thing. Exactly right.
Yeah. Sorry, Gary, but the good, the bad, and the ugly. Just leave it the good and the bad, I reckon. Buy, sell, hold. Steve, Api Coruscant will get back to his best in 2025 without the burden of the captaincy. Buy or sell?
Buy with buckets. Yep. He'll be at his best. He'll be his best because he doesn't have the burden of being captain, and also he will have another extremely experienced guy with high standards.
So you're taking captaincy off him?
Yeah. I'm taking it as a given that Luai's coming in as captain. Yeah. I think. Oh, sorry, Declan. I think Luai is actually a better personality for captain. I have to admit.
Yeah, I think as well. Like with Luai, he'll just have more of the ball as well. So like Api won't have that offensive burden to try and make everything happen around him. So therefore, he'll be able to pick and choose his timing, and he'll be more efficient, and he won't be trying to force as much. So I think just from having Luai there, he's going to do most of the ball playing and most of the touching the ball. I think that'll just make Api better, kind of more similar to what he was doing at Penrith. Because at Penrith, he really chose his moments well. He wasn't like a Karen Smith guy who just always had his hands on the ball, kind of shaping where they went. It was kind of the opposite. So I reckon that he'll go a little bit more like that for next season.
Yeah, as it stands, Nick, I would make Luai captain, but I do worry a little bit about making him the captain because he's come in from this great system and he is more a natural leader than Api, but it can be overwhelming. That's why I'd love to have a dude like Gutho at the club because they could share it and Api could drift into the background. But would you change and make Luai the sole captain?
Would you make Luai sole captain or would you make him and Api co-captains?
Well, you'd probably make him co-captains and Luai does all the press stuff because Api looks over all that stuff.
Yeah, I think either way, I think even if I'm a bit like Steve, I think Luai will probably come in and be captain. I think that's probably part of maybe what was offered to him when he comes to Tigers. But I would not be at all surprised if he and Api sort of share that role when they're both on the field next season.
Question 2, Declan. This is a positive one. Benji Marshall will be extended as coach before the end of 2025 season. Buy or sell?
Sell. I'm going to sell that one.
How many years have you got left? 2?
Yeah, he's got this year and next year. There's just so many question marks. There's so much to do. Just from the squad, what's our identity, what are we good at, what are we bad at, like what are our principles as a footy team. I just think there's so much that Benji still needs to prove, and I really hope he does get extended, because I think we've all seen sacking a coach, it has its way of just setting you backwards if you get it wrong, and I hope we don't have to go through that again. But I think Benji's got a lot to go before I can buy extending him.
All right, we've got a few to go here, boys, and we'll wrap it up. Nick, Jack Bird could be our answer at lock over the next couple of years. Buy or sell?
Buy. I'll buy that. A few people have said they don't think he's a lock, but and it's funny. I don't know. You probably saw the interview that Danny Weidler did with Jack Bird last week, but he asked Bird what position he thought he'd play, and Bird was very quick to say, "I think I'll play lock." He said, "I just need to get my fitness up, but I think I could be handy in that position." But I do see him as that kind of that link in the in between the forwards and the back. So I think he could do a good job there at 13.
Yeah, anything that concerns me a little bit about it is, like, if you look at someone like Isaiah Yeo, who plays that link role incredibly, but he's also able to take the hit up and play like a tough front rower, and you need your 13 to be able to do some hard carries. So I think Jack Bird ticks 90, three quarters of the boxes. I'm just concerned about those hit ups. We do need. We will need our 13 to do those heat ups.
Our cricket team, Steve, trains down at Sneak Park, Maroubra, which is the home of the guru, Roger Fabry, the sprint coach. I think he must get charged no rent to do all his, because that's where he gets all his 10, 11, 12-year-olds that pay $200 for an hour. Nick? Actually,
when I was watching that news clip last week, I saw the RF on the hat. For a second, I thought Jack Bird was down there with Roger Federer. I had no idea what was going on.
But no, he's working on his speed, Declan. That's probably a good thing, because he's definitely I know he's changed positions. Where do you think his best position is, Jack Bird, for us?
I think for us, it probably is lock. Whether he can make the transition to a successful lock, yeah, I'm not too sure, because I'm a big fan of like a forward playing that position, and like Bird's played pretty much all of his career in the backs, and yes, he does kind of have that unorthodox, like flamboyant style of attack where you can make something happen for nothing. Like he was just like so good at it at Cronulla. It's really a shame that injuries did kind of take that away from him a little bit too soon. But I think he's probably too slow now to play in the centres, and he's probably not robust enough. So yeah, I think that somewhere in the middle, maybe that right edge spot as well, could be something that he could fill. But yeah, I think an attack will be good, like when we're on top, when we've got quick play the balls, when our forwards are going quite well. But I think when we're struggling to get out of our own end and we're not like seeing a lot, the defence not giving us a lot, I think that's when it could become a little bit undone with him at 13.
Right, last one, boys. Steve, the bookmakers are reaching a little bit, having us on the 11th line of betting, which means there's 6 teams below us, to win the competition in 2025. $36. Surely you got to add a zero to that.
So there's 6 teams below us, less likely to win the competition.
Well, the interesting thing is sometimes they're a bit tricky, and sometimes I'll be interested to see when their wooden spoon market comes out, because I don't think we'll be, the 6th favourite to win the wooden spoon. I think we'll be in the top few favourites given our track record. But I did find that interesting. Like the teams below us, Steve, to win the comp are, lost my 100 bits of paper here, but they're the Dragons, the Dolphins, the Titans, the Raiders, the Knights, and there was one other. I was surprised by that.
Well, I'll just put aside my attitude about we've got to make the 8 and that's it. I'll just put that aside for a second, and just say, look, if that's going to come to fruition, if we're going to be a chance to get off the bottom again these next few months, all of these signings that we just talked about, the shaking the tree, get rid of a couple of players, that's going to make the difference. We get a couple of good players in, I think we're right there. If we don't, I don't know. Well, I think that market might be a little bit in our favour.
Alrighty, boys. Well, it's been a long episode, but Merry Christmas to you all, because I won't probably be on, but it's the B team back next week, Nick. It's Gary and Joel.
I love it. I love the B-listers. Good work, Joel. Love your work, mate. Gary?
Declan, you reckon you've got any more podcasts in you before Christmas? Maybe 1 or 2?
Yeah, we'll see how we go. I think Gary inspired me to come on tonight with his awful safe half take. It's a shame he's not here because I was really looking forward to just absolutely shredded him about it. But and then also Joel is off locking Galvin now because I think he referred to the Tigers as West. So now Joe's not happy with them. Let's just say that.
Yeah, he's. I'll leave that one alone, but Joel can address that one. All right, boys, it's been good chatting footy. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, boys.
Cheers, guys.